Hi, welcome. My name is Emily Larson, and I'm here at the Springville Museum of Art, and we're with professional artist Annie Poon as part of our Artist to Artist series. And we're excited to talk to her about her career and the advice she has for student artists. So, Annie, to start, do you want to talk to us a little bit about why you chose to be an artist and where your interest in art began?
Sure. Well, it began just as soon as my mom could get a pen into my hand. She, gave me a little journal when I was just a little kid at family home evening. And she said, draw a picture and I'll write on top what it is. And so I remember as I drew that and I felt this, like, it was like a new way to talk. And it was really exciting to me. So I knew I liked it. And then when I got to kindergarten, my teacher held up this chart that said, here's all the professions. You could be a fireman, a doctor, a secretary, an artist. And I thought, oh, I'm going to pick artist, and I'm going to work so hard that by the time I'm a grown up, I'll be, all ready to go. I'll have my, that'll be my life. And, my mom saw my interest, and she sent a note to my school that said that she was taking me out of school to give me an artistic education. And she took me on the train to New York City, and she took me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And we looked at the creche tree, which is, the angel tree with all the Italianate figures. And she showed me the painting galleries, and she said, this artist painted in this style and this artist painted in that style. And she would teach us to identify artists. And every time we got an artist right, she would give us a nickel. And we were then able to spend that in the little store. So those are my mom and my school, like all these amazing women, my sister, they all made me want to be an artist.
I love that. Those childhood experiences with art can be so formative in the way that we grow up and think about it. And I just realized I didn't ask you, but do you want to describe a little bit about the type of art you make and what your style is, and kind of if the students don't know your work, kind of give them a introduction to that?
I make these stop motion puppet, little puppet shows with paper. And I also involve like whatever media I have around the house.
The fire came for me. The fire came for me, for me, for me. For me, the fire came for me. 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 The princess sits outside the walls of her castle. She looks for the door, 'tis not where 'twas before. A comet flies low, and it circles the turrets. It leans down from heaven, she puts forth her hand. She is fearful outside of the black stony walls. She is fearful outside of the black stony walls. The princess, her family, awaits her inside. They neglected their dinner, they waited to dine, while under the table her sister is crying. How long will it take for the princess return?
Illustration is also a big part of my work. I illustrate children's books. And my style is really cartoony. It comes from the childhood drawings of like the backs of the cereal boxes. And I, used to want to work for Disney. So there's a lot of cartooning behind, all of my work.
Yeah, I love your style and how it comes together. And I think even though the style and sometimes the way of drawing is cartoony, and as you described, inspired by that, it's so powerful, and there's so many deep, complex ideas that you communicate through these simpler form sometimes, and it's really powerful. And we'll link to Annie's website and things in the description so you can check out more of her work there. But you kind of talked a little bit about cartoons and Disney and children's art inspiring you, but what other things inspire you, and where else do you find inspiration for your artwork?
I am really inspired by outsider art. And I know you know what outsider art is, but maybe some of the students might not know. Outsider art is the art of the people who are untrained. They just come up with their own style. And there's this museum in France called the Galerie d'Art Brut. Jean de Buffet put together this museum, and all of the artists in there are just, they're like, it's like they were working in a trance, you know, and some of them actually were working in a trance. You know, they're building stuff out of garbage. They're embroidering these weird shapes. They're, you know, allowing themselves to do automatic writing, and they're drawing on cardboard, or they're in a mental hospital and they're drawing on the, you know, the garbage that they find there. So I just get really inspired by that. And my husband and I actually made a trip all the way to France just to see that museum. And there's really nothing else in that town, but we went, you know, 2 days in a row, and we're going to go back because it's so inspiring.
Yeah, it's cool when you can find those museums or those places that have so many objects and artworks that are inspiring you, and outsider art is so cool. So yeah, if you haven't looked into it, that's a good thing to look into for the students. And we talked about your style a little bit, but how did you kind of come to creating in your specific medium and style of art, and how long did it take you to really find your niche and what the way you wanted to create?
Yes. So, you know, by the last semester of college, I was a painter, and I thought I was a good painter. You know, I was, you know, I had a style. Yeah, I was actually imitating other artists, but I was like, you know, this is I'm taking over this style. And I was making paintings that were actually about the limitations of paintings, because I had been doing it for so long, and I felt like there were things that I could not express. Like music was something that I couldn't do. And I felt like comedy and, you know, storytelling. I felt like a painting just told the story of one moment, which might not be true for a lot of paintings, but I felt like it was a snapshot. And so these are the issues that were kind of clogging my brain. And then when I got married during my last semester of college, my husband actually just said something. He said, "I don't find your paintings interesting. I don't see any joy in your paintings. I don't see your personality in your paintings." And he said, "Well, why don't you think about your childhood and something that really excited you that you used to do, and go back to that." And he gives the best advice. So as soon as he said that, I remembered that when I was a kid, I loved to play with paper, and I would cut out little characters with my twin sister, and then we would draw these backgrounds and animate the characters with our hands. You know, sometimes we'd even make like a little cut in the paper and then stick the straw through the cut and, you know, make it animate. Probably a lot of people have done stuff like that. And so as soon as he told me, you know, that I needed to try something that I loved, I was just like, oh, I want to make these cutouts. And you know, we used to draw these little, we did it in the corner of our playhouse. We had like a little window, and we would do these puppet shows. So anyway, I drew this huge house on the side of the wall in my studio, and I cut out my little kitten from the Tale of Tom Kitten by Beatrix Potter, this tale from my youth. I cut up the little kitten, and I just started moving it around the house. And then I thought, well, I need a grade. I need to record what I'm doing. So I got a camera from the sculpture department, and I started filming my little character moving along. And this turned into animation. That was animation, and I didn't even realize it. And then I just went on to continue making these paper animations, and I do it to this day.
So we've talked a little bit about your career path and different parts of it, but what has been your career path with art, and how did you decide which career paths to take, whether you're doing illustration or becoming a studio artist, or how did that go for you? How did you make those decisions?
Well, I was confused in art school. And like I said, my husband told me, do something more interesting. So then I started doing the animation, and that was actually like the point where my career really started, because I started entering film festivals, and one of the first movies I made, called Runaway Bathtub, it had a really creative soundtrack. It was this little girl singing as she watched my movie, and we recorded her singing and talking and narrating, and it was really charming. And I put this film in a film festival, and the Museum of Modern Art had someone there who was just scouting for animations for the Museum of Modern Art. And she came up to me after the film and she said, I'm from the Museum of Modern Art. We would like to ask if we can purchase this movie from you. And I just
dun 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 dun. Splash splash splash. Boats, they're boats, all floating around. Sunny days, there's fish caught, catching fish, catching fish, catching fish, catching fish. They're floating in the water, we're 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 drinking in some tea. It's very nice, so we'll drink it all we need. It's yummy fish, we love to have fish. Quack, 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 tweet, 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 quack, 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 sail, sail, sail. There is lots of animals, dun, 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 pour out some water, we're pouring out some water, we're pouring out some water, we're floating all the way, we're floating, we're floating, we're floating, we're floating. The dolphins give us some ride back home. Oh, it's fun to have a thing.
Having that animation in the Museum of Modern Art, it opened so many doorways for me. People would just kind of perk up their ears when they saw that on my resume. And there's a guy, a really good friend of mine named Glenn Nelson, who is the founder of the Center for Latter-day Saint Art. And he commissioned me to do a painting, an animation called The Book of Visions. And that movie has kind of remained like, it's like a key to the rest of my work.
The Book of Visions.
Joan of Arc. Joan was from the peaceful village of Domeray, France. But outside of her peaceful village, apathy, greed, and violence raged across the countryside. The English enslaved France. Who was to save France? Saint Michael and Catherine trained her in the art of war. They guided her through enemy lines to the king. She received command of the whole army and flushed the English out. Dead France awoke suddenly to life. But poor Joan was betrayed by the king and his evil chancellors.
And Glenn and I continue to work together until, now we have the Center for Latter-day Saint Arts. He's always included me in these exhibitions. He has a lot of faith in me and my work. And I would say just getting opportunities from him and from the LDS art scene has really helped me. My career path. So I'm still, working a lot with Glenn and with the center and getting opportunities there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's good advice for the students too, to think about as you progress in the career, like where are you finding people that are really easy and meaningful to collaborate with, who are helping support your work, and how do you maintain those partnerships and professional relationships as you move through your career, because those can be really fruitful areas to find more work and to make really meaningful art. So that's awesome. And yeah, it is a huge accomplishment to be in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. So that is a really exciting part of your career. What is your artistic process when you do create these animations or some of the prints that you create? What's your process, and how long does it take you to finish a typical piece?
It takes me months to make a piece. It can take up to a year. I love long projects because I break it down, and every day I have a little task to do. I love a calendar, I love a schedule. So, every day I can film about 5 to 8 seconds depending. And, if I'm making a 6-minute film, that takes months. So The Split House is a movie that took me 10 years to make. It's one of my favorites, and the process on that one was that I wasn't going to show it to anyone. It was just about my own personal struggle with mental health, and I would just go and animate it. Every couple years I would work on it in a little spurt, and then I didn't know what the ending would be. I didn't even really know what it was about, but I take these ideas, these little song clips, these little obsessions of mine or little interests of mine, and I just put it into the movie. And I don't worry if it makes sense or not, because I always find that after I've created a piece, just kind of stumbling around trying to put something together, I always see that there's a positive message at the end. And so I would say my process involves a lot of curiosity on my part of what's going on inside. Music, a lot of it is sketchbooking. I have, like this many sketches that I'm not using, but I'm constantly just trying out little drawings. Sketching is actually the number one thing that I would say that I use. So I would encourage everyone to keep a sketchbook, because you can capture so much of you that you didn't even know was there,
Yeah, I agree. Sketching is a great low pressure way to just get ideas out and see what kind of comes to the surface, definitely. And I think breaking big projects into small chunks that you do every day is also such a a smart way to work, especially when you have something really big. And I know for a lot of the high school students, they probably haven't made a ton of really big or super time consuming projects, and it can be intimidating to move up in scale like that. And so that's a great tip, to really think about what can you accomplish each day, because if you do 6 seconds a day of create that much of the video, then over 6 months you have quite a bit of a video. So that's so great. And we've talked a little bit about how your artwork has kind of changed over time. I love the story you told about moving from painting and to that joy of the art you made as a child and letting that influence your work. For your medium and your style and your art making, what are your favorite techniques to use, tips or tricks? I'm sure there's a lot of students who are really interested in getting into stop motion animation and creating work in the style that you do, but I know it's something they probably don't have as much experience with in school and in their classes. Do you have any tips or tricks for getting into it?
Sure. I would say, keeping a sketchbook, as we just now said, that will help you understand what it is that you're going to be working on at all. If you wait until you can't just buy a bunch of art supplies and develop techniques and then suddenly expect that you're going to have something to make art about. At one point you have to stop buying art supplies and you just have to sit down and commit to exploring one idea. And I would say that getting iMovie or Premiere, those are two editing programs that I've used. I've done all my early work was on iMovie, and it's very user-friendly. And then Premiere is another editing program. It's Adobe, so you have to pay for a subscription. But as far as techniques, I look at the techniques of children. That is what inspires me the most. I don't know if I'm trying to imitate children or if I'm actually just going back and reliving what it was like, but when I see how simple the work of children is, that inspires me to just use what's around me in my home. I would also say you want to have like one big project that you're working on at a time, but at the same time, you want to be doing like little things every day, little challenges every day. And these are going to help you to experiment and develop new techniques. So the last thing I would say is there are group challenges where you can just create one thing a day for, post it on Instagram. And these are really good ways also to develop your ideas. So I would just say, feed your curiosity and use simple materials. Look at the work of whatever it was that gave you joy and animate about that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And those kind of Instagram challenges or one challenge a day kinds of things can be good because it can make you think about how, like, things you wouldn't normally create art about potentially. I'm thinking of, is it Inktober in October where everyone does ink drawings? And like, I think I'm simplifying it, but I think like one day there was a prompt about like drawing an octopus or a sea creature. And maybe you would never draw something like that, but then when you're in the challenge, it makes you think, yeah, like you just said, expand your ideas and your techniques. So those are really, really valuable things to do. What is your favorite piece of artwork that you've ever created and why?
My favorite piece, it's called The Split House. And that is the one I was talking about that took me the 10 years to create. The reason I like that movie is because I had so much inside of me, so much trauma from difficult times during high school. It was so difficult. And I was struggling with mental illness, but I didn't know it. And when I made this piece, it was about all those struggles. I just let it all out. And even in the soundtrack, it was the first time I'd done like an entire soundtrack for a movie, which I loved. Even in the soundtrack, there's like this scream. Take me to the mountain. I went from this area of feeling depression to, as I worked on the movie, as the years went by, my perspective changed and I became more hopeful about my religion, about my fate, about my destiny. And so the end of the film depicts that, realizing that happy, joyful destiny. And a lot of women really relate to this movie. I've seen, people connect to it more than any other film that I made. And it's on display right now at the BYU Art Museum.
Yeah, so if you're in the area, you'll have to go check it out. We've had it on display once at the Springville Museum of Art, and it is such a powerful piece. Like, even kind of thinking about it, it makes me feel emotional just because it is such a powerful representation of that. And I think that's a good example too of, oftentimes I think for artists, when they use really personal individual experiences to can't think of the word I want to use, but when they're drawing on those to make art, oftentimes, like, almost the more personal and individual you get, the more universal it becomes, because and people can really relate to those emotions and those experiences of because we're all humans, and even though we don't all have the same experiences, there's a lot of similarities in those. And so it is such a powerful piece, Annie, and definitely students, you should go look at it and find it if you can, if you're in the area. How did you learn to have confidence in your artwork? And do you ever feel imposter syndrome or feel like you're comparing yourself to other artists? And how do you combat that?
I come from a family of 11, and we are all very different. And I think my parents somehow conveyed to us that they wanted us all to be different, to pursue whatever it was that we wanted to do. So, I was, from that age, I was always encouraged to be different, and I never compared myself to other, artists. I just wanted to be me. And I knew that if I worked from my own experiences, because I'm different, because we're each different, that I would need to worry about making art that was different. It would be different. So I did collect the monographs of artists that I loved. But I was very interested in seeing what path they took to become, well known. And I was very interested in seeing how people's work evolved over time. So I looked at their work. It probably really improved my work, but I think that everyone should learn to work from their own experiences, from finding out what it is that they like to do. What are they passionate about? What are they binging on Netflix? Whatever that is, whatever your outside hobbies are, bring that in, and it'll create this really beautiful mix that's like unlike any other mix. So.
Yeah, that's a great advice for sure. And I love to think about what you're binging on Netflix should be influencing your art. I need to maybe think about that. Do you have a favorite artist that inspires you, or that you think the students should know about?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of his pieces here I can show you. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, these are just two. Well, here I have a third. Okay, so this artist is named Howard Finster. He passed away recently, and he is definitely an outsider artist. He became a preacher, and very late in his life, he decided that he was going to start making art, and he just created hundreds of pieces of art. Here's a little cutout. I love that it's a cutout, and it says, "Mother Rabbit has a hard time raising her babies." So nothing was off limits. Nothing was too silly for him. And then he also, I said he was a preacher. He was very religious. So here's a little angel that he created, and it has glitter on it. And then he always wrote a spiritual message on the back. This says, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Anyway, it's the prayer. And here's the third one I'll show you, which is supposed to be about the last days, and it's this earth that's breaking in half, and it says, "The earth and the works therein shall burn up, and there shall be no place found, for the sun shall turn black and go out, and the glory of God will light up." And I I just feel his zeal, when I look at his work. So yeah, I have 3 of his pieces and I really, really love him. So
Yeah, that stuff's so interesting. I love the angel. My boss here at the museum, she loves any art that has to do with angels. So I'm always interested in that, and that's a really interesting piece. And I love the way he cuts those out. So thanks for introducing us to him. Just a couple more questions, and mainly kind of your advice for the students who are listening. The first one is, what do you wish you knew in high school about making art?
and I really wish that my teacher, instead of just teaching us about technique, would teach us a little bit about what was behind the work. And I think it's so important to learn what is behind another artist's work. And I think when you do that, when you learn more about other artists, it will really help you to benefit from your own work and not just be confused and creating, one style here, one style there.
Yeah, it's really important to know the techniques, but to also think about the conceptual and what's driving different work. So that's really important to think about. Do you have any other advice for the high school students as they continue to make art or pursue careers in art?
Sure. Well, the most important lesson that I'm only learning now is that, you cannot equate your talent with money. You can't say, oh, well, I I'm not selling this work, it must be bad. Don't even think about that. In fact, I think that your art and money should be as separated as they can be, and then do outside things. I think you should prepare yourself to have something going on the side, which I'm calling a side hustle. So for me, I illustrate children's books. I draw houses for a real estate company. I do commissions, and then, I'm able to make enough money on the side that my art is not like a burden on me. It's actually like a punctuation mark in my life. So I would say, have some kind of side hustles. If you can learn skills that are going to enable you to have the time and money to make your artwork, that would be great. Also, I would say, don't stress about art school. Going to art school, you have to go to this school, you have to go to that. You can get into a lot of debt. And I think that there are so many wonderful schools that have great art departments, but they're not just art schools. So I made the mistake of thinking there was only one place for me, and I basically was miserable until I finally got there. I thought I had to be here in New York City going to this one school. But like BYU has an incredible art department. They're really good about exposing the students to, great art. Snow College, they have a great art department. So I would say finances are very important. Don't go into a lot of debt. Develop your side hustle, being friendly, make friends and show your work to everybody. You never know what might happen. I mean, Emily, I know that, we worked together when you were still at BYU, and now you're, look at what you become, and we have this great relationship. And I just think you need to cultivate friendships. And finally, you need to have a website. One of the best ways that I've developed professional relationships is I have a website, and then I go on Instagram and I'll make a comment on somebody's post that I like, and maybe I'll keep commenting. And then, they go to my Instagram profile, they look at my website, and if they like what they see, then we're suddenly friends and we're working together and we're supporting one another. So I would say stay on social media and have a website. And that would be my parting advice.
No, it's so true. Those are such important things, like maintaining friendships and relationships with people you come across, because you never know 10, 20 years later where you'll both end up and how you can help each other in different ways. And I look for artists on websites all the time. So it's if you're pursuing a professional career in the arts, it's definitely worth investing in that. So that's great advice. And we just want to thank you so much, Annie, for spending this time with us and talking to the students and being part of this series. Your work is so powerful and important, and we're just lucky to have you as part of the series.
Thank you, Emily.